This thing right here has shaped more revolutions than most weapons ever could. It has toppled governments, destabilized empires, and quietly determined who held power for thousands of years. And it's probably sitting in your kitchen right now. It's not a weapon. It's not a poison. You probably ate some this morning, maybe yesterday, maybe every single day of your life, without ever stopping to question what it really is or what it costs to get here. Bread, the most influential staple food in human history, the so-called staff of life. But behind its simplicity lies a darker story, one woven so deeply into human civilization that once you see it, you can't unsee it. Because bread didn't just change what humans ate, it changed who had power, who had freedom, and who depended on whom to survive. And parts of that story are still unfolding right now. For most of human history, humans lived as hunter-gatherers. For roughly 300,000 years, we moved with the seasons. We followed animals. We tracked rivers. Land wasn't owned because ownership, as we know it, barely existed. You lived where resources allowed you to live. Then around 12,000 years ago, everything changed. In the Fertile Crescent, modern-day Iraq, Syria, and parts of Turkey, humans stopped following food. They started growing it. And this shift, especially the cultivation of wheat, triggered one of the biggest transformations in human history. Here's what most history books gloss over. This wasn't immediately progress. It was a trade-off, because farming created something humans had never really possessed before at scale: surplus. And surplus changed everything. Before stored grain, wealth was difficult to accumulate. Food was temporary. You hunted it, gathered it, consumed it. But grain could be stored. And the moment food could be stored, it could be controlled. That changed human society forever. The people who controlled the storage controlled survival. The granary became one of humanity's first centers of political power. And from that point on, bread didn't just feed civilization. It helped build the systems that civilization runs on. If bread began as food, Egypt turned it into infrastructure. The Egyptians didn't invent bread, but they perfected it. They mastered leavened bread, using naturally occurring yeast to create loaves far closer to what we recognize today. And this wasn't just culinary innovation. It was administrative power. The Nile flooded with remarkable regularity, depositing fertile silt across Egypt's fields. That made large-scale wheat production possible, and the state controlled much of it. Bread became central to Egypt's economy. Workers who built monumental state projects, including the pyramids, were often compensated with food rations, including bread and beer. In practical terms, bread functioned as a form of economic payment. It wasn't just food. It was labor, currency, and political stability baked into one system. This created what historians often describe as grain dependency, a society deeply reliant on centrally managed food distribution. And once a population depends on a food system controlled from above, that food becomes more than nourishment. It becomes leverage. Rome studied that model and scaled it. At the height of the empire, hundreds of thousands of Roman citizens received subsidized or free grain through the state. This system was called the annona, and it served a crucial political purpose: keep the grain flowing and social order held. Interrupt the supply, and unrest followed. The Roman poet Juvenal captured this reality with the phrase panem et circenses, bread in circuses. It's often interpreted as a criticism of public distraction through food and entertainment, but beneath it was a deeper truth. Food security was political strategy. Bread wasn't simply charity, it was social control. And Rome's dependence on grain shaped its military decisions. North Africa became one of Rome's most valuable territories, largely because of its agricultural output. Grain wasn't just part of empire, it was one of the reasons empire expanded. And when supply chains fractured in the 5th century, Rome's stability fractured with them. The Western Roman Empire didn't collapse because of one battle. It weakened through systemic failure, and food disruption was part of that collapse. Now jump to France, 1789. The story most people know is about liberty, equality, and revolution. But underneath all of it was something brutally simple. People were hungry. France had suffered devastating harvest failures. Grain prices soared. For many working-class Parisians, bread consumed the majority of their daily income. And when people can no longer afford their most basic food, political theory becomes secondary. Survival takes over. The resulting unrest helped ignite the French Revolution. Even after the monarchy fell, revolutionary leaders quickly moved to regulate grain prices. Why? Because they understood something every government eventually learns: control the bread supply or lose control of society. Bread and power had become inseparable. And here's the part that should make you uncomfortable. This story didn't end. It just got more complicated. Today, global wheat supply depends on fragile international trade networks, commodity markets, and geopolitical stability. We saw this clearly in 2022. When Russia invaded Ukraine, one of the world's largest wheat exporters, global wheat prices surged. The effects were immediate: higher bread prices, supply pressure, food insecurity across multiple regions. The names controlling distribution may have changed, but the structure hasn't. Ancient Egypt had granaries. Rome had shipping routes. Modern civilization has supply chains, different technology, same vulnerability. The dark side of bread isn't about carbs, it isn't about gluten, and it isn't about whether sourdough is healthier than white bread. The dark side of bread is structural. It's the fact that one simple staple helped create humanity's earliest systems of centralized control. For 12,000 years, civilizations have been organized around one basic question: who controls the grain? Because whoever controls food often controls everything else. Every time you cut a slice of bread, you're touching a story thousands of years old. A story of empires, revolutions, power, dependence. That doesn't make bread evil. It makes it one of the most consequential foods in human history. And once you understand that, you start seeing the world differently. If this video made you see something you couldn't unsee, that's exactly what this channel does every week. We take the ordinary things in your life and pull back the curtain. Subscribe so you don't miss the next one. Because every day on this channel, we uncover the hidden histories behind the things you interact with every single day. And before you go, tell me in the comments, what shocked you most? The Egyptian bread economy? Rome's grain dependency? Or the fact that this same structure still shapes the modern world? Next week, we're diving into sugar, a story even darker than bread. And trust me, you'll never look at it the same way again.